join us now covering the NFL Draft for Fantasy Pros. Our good buddy, Russell Brown. Find him on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Oh, Russell, it's Christmas week for you, my friend. How are you? How's life? How are things, partner?
No, things are great, man. I appreciate you always letting me come on, talk a little Lions, talk a little draft. I hope things are well on your end.
All is well, except for the chaos and madness that is the NFL Draft, and this idea that there's a high bust probability with any pick that you take, right? And so I want to start first with all of this quarterback nonsense that I keep hearing about in regards to the Detroit Lions, especially early on. Like, I've seen people talking about quarterback at 6 for the Lions. I don't think that's a fit. I don't think that's a need. I don't even think best player on the board at that point is going to be a quarterback. What say you about Lions and quarterback at 6 or even 18?
I think 18 is a little bit more realistic than 6. When I look at 6, I find it hard to believe that they would swing for, an Anthony Richardson, a Will Levis, or even a C.J. Stroud. I don't even think C.J. Stroud makes it down the board that far. I know there's been a lot of speculation that he will, but I just would be a little bit surprised if Indianapolis would pass on him there at 4. Crazier things have happened. Now, I will say, I do know that the Lions coaching staff or scouts went to Florida games at least 5 times this past year. So could they have gone to those games to take a look at Anthony Richardson? Very possible. But could they be there looking at Osiris Torrance? Could they be looking at the right tackle that they had, Richard Gagora, if I remember how to say his name correctly, or maybe Gervon Dexter, the interior defensive lineman? So there's a couple of different draft prospects that are eligible from Florida, so it's not fair to just simply imply that they're going after Anthony Richardson. But they did do their homework on the Florida team, but ultimately, I think at 6, it's not what they're going to do. I really think their board shapes up somewhere along the lines of, Will Anderson, Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, and then maybe a little bit of a safer pick would maybe be Peter Skoronski. Other than that, I don't see where a quarterback fits at 6. I'm with you. I think at 18, if Hendon Hooker was there, I think that might be where they reach for that position, just simply because they do like him a lot. And he's somebody that they got to meet with at the Senior Bowl. And when we left Mobile, we heard a lot of great things in connecting the dots of Tennessee and the Lions and just the prospect that is Hendon Hooker.
So let's go there next, because we've already jumped into the Hendon Hooker conversation early this morning, and we've been doing so now for a few weeks. I like Hendon Hooker, even though he's not readily available due to injury. Like, I do like this idea of an older guy at the quarterback position. There's more maturity there. The numbers back up his play before his injury. I mean, his completion percentage is just shy of 70% for his career. I think he had 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions before the injury took place. Like, it just, the age doesn't really seem to be much of a factor. So I don't care if a guy comes into the league and he's 23, 24, 25, 26 years old when he could finally be eligible for the NFL. That doesn't bother me at that particular position, because we're seeing guys play longer, deeper into their careers, up to 38, 39, 40, and then the ageless wonder Tom Brady, 40 plus. So his age doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It doesn't bother me as well. I think the biggest thing is just that, he'll be 26 after his rookie season, which you could make a case like, okay, how long do I have with this guy? He's coming off this torn ACL. Does he get hurt again? And then all of a sudden the window gets even shorter. So I think it just kind of depends on the window that you expect to have him during that time that you draft him or want to keep him on your roster. But when you look at the player, Hendon Hooker, had he not torn the ACL, I think we'd be talking about him as, one of the second or third best quarterbacks in this draft. I really do. I mean, he was on pace to win the Heisman. I mean, that's just what it is. Like, he was playing out of his mind, and he did well during his 2 years with the Volunteers. Through those 24 straight games, he posted 58 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's a very good passer that can operate in rhythm consistently. The footwork is clean. And I think somebody's going to take a swing at him because, like I said, you're going to get him at 25. You can keep him basically for that 5 years because you're going to get that fifth-year option. You can get him up to age 30. And if you have an interesting quarterback room, which the Lions do because of the Jared Goff contract and situation, you could justify that, hey, if you know that you're not going to get him at pick 48, sometimes you got to reach a little bit and take your guy at 18, especially because they've kind of hinted at the potential of wanting a quarterback. But I think part of that hint is simply because they maybe want to move out of that 6th spot or maybe move out of that 18th spot. So I think there's going to be some trade value there if they can try to pull the trigger and make that trade. But I'm with you. I don't know if they really go quarterback too early. It doesn't feel like it. Again, 18 maybe, but at the same time, it doesn't fit with what they're trying to build. It really is not. I feel like they're comfortable with Jared Goff, and everybody overlooks him a little bit. He threw for 4,400 yards and 29 touchdowns last year. He's efficient in this offense. So I think it's one of those, they're comfortable with that type of player. And I think if Jared Goff realizes that he's not going to be getting, Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson or that type of money, then we're okay.
And I like what you said there about Hendon Hooker on pace to win the Heisman, and the fact that if he doesn't get injured, he is probably a top 3 pick in this year's draft. A quarterback would probably go 1, 2, and 3 if he doesn't get injured with Carolina, Houston. Maybe Arizona would trade back with Indy, and they get the quarterback rumors kind of brewing a little bit. Now, that's if Hendon Hooker doesn't get injured. I also like the idea that he played in the SEC, which is where a majority of the players, if you look conference for conference, a larger percentage of NFL draftees are going to come from the SEC. And they have been doing that for many years. Like, the guy is a dog, and I want a quarterback who's a little buttoned up, right? He's the CEO of my organization, so I don't need a whole lot of flamboyant extra noise. I need somebody who just comes in and acts like a professional. I feel like you get a lot of that value off the field with Hendon Hooker as well. So let's say that, let's just say where are you? Who do you have mocked to the Lions right now at the 6th spot?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if I can go too much into detail on what could potentially happen at 3. I don't think there's going to be a trade there. It's worth noting that since 2018 or 2017, I believe it's 2018, there's only been 2 trades within the top 9 picks. I mean, the trades that happen just are kind of ridiculous that you see in mock drafts, like a team jumping from 11, or the Washington Commanders are going to move up and shake up the draft. Again, anything can happen. It's always a crapshoot. We know that. But genuinely speaking, it's normally the same teams in the same spots like it's been. And with that, I think with how the board's going to fall, I really don't know if Devin Witherspoon is going to be there at 6. And I think the Lions could potentially try to pivot away from Devin Witherspoon. And I think Christian Gonzalez still makes a lot of sense for them. I've been on that train for quite a while, and I think he's a fit. The Oregon ties, the West Coast ties to Brad Holmes, you can make a case there. You look at the player, he's very fluid. He's a great cover corner. He's the best in the draft, in my opinion. He's physical through the catch point. He can play through the hands of the receivers consistently with his length. He's got the speed. And the fun fact about him is his sister, Melissa, is married to former Lions quarterback David Blau. But he's a track and field type kid. And I see a lot of stuff like, hey, he's not overly physical. He doesn't fit the mold of what Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes want in a corner. And it's like, well, to be fair, they've never drafted a corner. Ifeatu Melifonwu is the only cornerback that they've drafted during their tenure. Like, they just don't really draft at the position. They find guys like Jerry Jacobs, undrafted free agents, A.J. Parker, undrafted free agents. Like, that's what they've been able to do. And they signed a bunch of guys, and they moved a guy from a previous regime that was drafted high in the draft. And I just think it's a little bit unfair to say Christian Gonzalez doesn't fit. When you look at today's game, you need guys that can cover. It's a passing league. He's the best that can do it. He makes a lot of sense. So I think at 6, if he's there, he's potentially the guy that I would zero in on. And I only say that because, again, I don't think Devin Witherspoon could be on the board. I think there's a scenario where it makes a lot of sense that he's gone.
So if Gonzalez and Witherspoon were both there, right, would it be fair to say that Gonzalez is maybe better at covering, but Witherspoon is maybe a more active, definitely, I mean, a guy will run out there and lay the wood. Like, he is not afraid to hit, but maybe a more physical? Is that a good way to put it? Or how do you compare the two that are widely regarded as the top 2 corners available in this draft?
That's the best way to put it. And I think with Witherspoon, too, is he's a bit of an outlier. He's only 181 pounds. Denzel Ward was the last corner that we've seen drafted this high in the draft that's under 185 pounds. He's like 184. So he's somewhat of an outlier. He's a little bit on the thin side, but he carries his weight very well. He's got that muscular frame. So I think that's a great way of just summarizing it, is he's a little bit more willing as a tackler. He's a lot more physical. He's, like you said, willing to lay the wood. and Gonzalez is the better cover corner. But again, I think when you look at a specific team, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, I think if you look at Arizona at 3, he makes a lot of sense there. And we always see these drafts and mock drafts, and I'm guilty of it too. We kind of go through the same old names every single time. But a top 5 that maybe goes like Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Devin Witherspoon, C.J. Stroud, and Jalen Carter, I think it makes a lot more sense, that top 5, and it sounds a lot more realistic than the same old thing that we've been kind of seeing over the last several weeks in regards to the top 5. And I think when you look at Arizona, he makes a lot of sense. So for the people out there that want to bet on it, at DraftKings, he's plus 2,000 to be the number 3 pick. And I think if you're willing to throw $5-10 on it, you're going to make some serious money if he ends up being the pick. Again, I don't know that for sure, but I've heard from multiple sources within the last 24 hours that Devin Witherspoon in Arizona, there's a lot of interest there, a lot of connecting the dots. And when you look at their roster, it's bad. I mean, it is bad. And there's a player named Antonio Harrison playing at corner. I don't even know who that is. And then Marco Wilson is not any good. He's been a liability in coverage. He's given up 96 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns in his 2 years. They need a corner bad in that defense. And if there's any uncertainty in Tyree Wilson and coming off that fractured foot because lower body ailment injuries do reoccur, I think Devin Witherspoon, you think last year Derek Stingley went to 3 at Houston, I think it could be a similar situation this year.
Russell Brown, what do we make of the Jalen Carter situation? And if somehow he does end up falling to 6, do you think that is somebody that the Lions would actually select at 6 because of, look, 9 pounds heavier at his pro day than he was at the combine, allegedly didn't finish the drills, didn't look great out there, looked out of shape. I don't know how you could do that on the biggest day for your resume ever, like the most important job interview ever, but that is the report. He had the car accident. He was charged a misdemeanor. But it did cost the lives of 2 people within the program, and he did return back to the scene, and there was a little bit of a mix-up in the story of what was really taking place. So is that enough red flaggage, if you will? I just made up a word. Is that too many flags right now? Is this like an NFL pass interference of flags everywhere? Would they steer clear of Jalen Carter or select him?
I see a lot of the national media putting him out there as a fit for them, and to be honest, I disagree with it. I don't see him being on the board. I've heard that they're not as high on him as people want to make it out to be, and a lot of it is because of the off the field stuff. You see a great player, and I've come across stuff as far as, hey, the Georgia program, that the coaches are glad that he entered the draft and that he's now gone. They don't have to worry about getting him in shape. They don't have to lay awake at night wondering what's he doing off the field. And, the stuff that happened in January, it's very unfortunate because lives were lost. And obviously he had some involvement in that type of race that was maybe occurring. But at the same time, this isn't the first time he's been pulled over and ticketed and been warned about his speed when driving a car. It happened on September 15th. He had been pulled over during the season, the first couple of weeks of the season last season. And he ended up getting 3 tickets for going, I believe he was going 89 in a 45. He had window tints on his all of his windows, and then his windshield. That was another ticket. So he had 3 separate tickets in that. He had to go to court, I believe, by Halloween and pay the fines and all that stuff. But, the police officer that pulled him over really helped him out and didn't take him to jail or file any serious charges against him. So I think there's a lot of red flags, but ultimately I don't think he's going to be there at 6. I think Seattle's going to be the fit. I've connected way too many dots there, and I've heard a lot of things as far as Pete Carroll loves him. Pete Carroll is going to swing for the fences as he, reaches the final chapter of his career. We don't know if this is going to be his last year or next year is going to be the last year, whatever. They want to win now with Pete, and I think ultimately Jalen Carter, you get him away from Georgia, his home state of Florida, you get him away from that. Maybe it helps a little bit, and ultimately that seems to be a good place where guys can kind of figure things out. And I think if he goes to a place like Seattle, it might work out for him, and ultimately I think that's the pick.
Yes or no to this question? If Will Anderson is there, he is the pick.
100%.
Okay.
That's a run to the podium. That's the top guy on their board, and obviously on many other boards, including my own. But there's so much overthinking with Will Anderson. It's pretty crazy.
All right, good. So everybody overthink it. He could drop. We could pick him up. We could pick him up at 6. That's great because the versatility, right? I mean, he can.
Yeah.
he's an outside linebacker that can also play off the edge. I mean, I just feel like there's just so much that they would be able to do. And we saw how creative Aaron Glenn got in the use of Aiden Hutchinson, their NASCAR package. You had John Kaminsky running around out there with oven mitts on his hands because he broke both his thumbs. It's just incredible. So my fantasy scenario here, Will Anderson falls to 6. The Lions get him. Then what do they do if they get Will Anderson at 6? What would they do then at 18? Would they stay on the line, or would they go then to the secondary? Because there's a guy back there from Penn State who I'm very intrigued by, in Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to move that 18th pick. I mean, that's been kind of reported the last 2 or 3 days, and I think that they're in a very interesting spot. And when you look at the draft order, I could make a case for multiple different trade scenarios. I mean, you look at potentially, another trade with Minnesota. Is it possible? Does Minnesota want to move up for a specific player? You look at Dallas. Dallas, I think, wants to make a splash on the offensive side of the football. So could they move up? Buffalo has been, discussed as a potential trade-up candidate, but ultimately you look at maybe Kansas City. They don't have a bunch of needs, but they've got 9 or 10 picks in this draft. They don't need all of the picks. They might be willing to move up to 18 to maybe get Zay Flowers. The Lions move down, but I'm with you there. If Joey Porter Jr. is potentially there, which I think he might be, if he is there, I think he ends up, very much being an intriguing option for them. He's got great length. It immediately jumps off on the tape, and he's a guy that I think gets a little bit too grabby from time to time. But when you think of physical press man corners, he's that type of player, and he's a great athlete as well. So I think he makes a lot of sense. I would certainly want to see another player in there as well. My 12th overall player in this draft, Deonte Banks out of Maryland. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit for us. I think he's very versatile. I think he can play press man. I think he can play off man. He ran the 40 in 4.35 seconds. I just think he's a great athlete. There's some limitations as far as ball skills. He hasn't been as productive as other corners in this draft, but I think if he's there at 18, I don't think he will be, but if he is there at 18, I think he's a player that makes a lot of sense for Detroit as well. So I think they might have an option there between Deonte Banks and Joey Porter Jr.
Well, I'm telling you what, folks, Russell Brown, find him on Twitter at RussNFLDraft. He is going to be on the television on the network soon. I can feel it in my bones. Russell, my man, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time, partner, and enjoy the NFL draft on Thursday night, man. Let's touch base afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. You guys do the same. Go Lions.
There he goes, Russell Brown. I love that. I mean, there's just, he's just got the delivery. He's got the delivery that, like when he's talking about a guy, he just get him on the TV. Russell Brown, Todd McShay, and Mel Kiper and Matt Miller all going head to head